Let's bring in Kevin Clark, the Ringer NFL writer. His article today, the NFL keeps failing hiring 101. So, listen, Matt Rule, it's hard. Matt Rule was a great college coach. He's struggling. Kingsbury got fired by his alma mater. He looks great. So a lot of this is tied. If you have a great quarterback like Kyrie, it's a lot easier. But give me a little insight into your article in The Ringer today about the hiring process and why so many coaches don't work quickly.
Yeah. It's interesting, Colin, because I ran into an owner a couple months ago at a league event, and we got to talking about what works and what doesn't. He said this epiphany that the only competitive advantage that's sustainable is culture. And that you can say, okay, we're going to do this on offense, we're going to do this on defense, we're going to do this in the draft, but that can be caught up to, that can be replicated. A guy can leave the building and take it. And culture is the one thing you can build and not lose. And it's hard to build it. And when I look around at hiring, it was interesting. I got some data from this. 75% of NFL GMs who've been hired since 2010 came from the scouting community. 70% were from Super Bowl teams. So NFL owners just go out there and say, okay, this guy's the number 2 for a Super Bowl team. Let's hire him. There's almost no thought put into it. Part of the reason, Colin, is because it's really only 3 weeks, the hiring is even done.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of time spent on it. I mean, the process is kind of broken. And one thing, I heard this a couple weeks ago from somebody really smart. They said, if the Bears go out and fire Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, you know what they're going to do? They're going to hire the Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy of 2021. They're going to do the same thing they always did. They're just going to find a number 2 with a good team and a hot coordinator and pair them up. And at some point you just say, isn't this whole thing a little bit broken? Shouldn't we expand the pool of what we're looking for?
It's interesting. I said this yesterday, is Harbaugh was more successful in the NFL than he won 69% of his games with Alex Smith and Kaepernick. Certainly capable, not elite. And I would say, and it's that's better than Parcells and Belichick. And they not had a winning season for 8 years before Jim. And then he leaves and they get bad again. So he's had 4 jobs. He's turned them around. And I do think, Kevin, what's happening to college football, I am for player mobility and the NIL, but it's the wild, wild west now. There's no bumpers on this stuff. It's just pay them what you want, bidding wars, players can transfer after a game. And I do think Jim's kind of a guy that likes control and structure. Yeah. We know that. Is he considering the NFL? It tells me I think he is.
I think he is. And I think that if you have the option right now, I think that there are some guys who love college and can thrive in this new environment. Lincoln Riley, I think he's all in on NIL and the transfer portal. There's some guys, Mario Cristobal, he's in.
Yep.
But Jim Harbaugh didn't sign up for this brand of college football. And I think that he might just say, listen, I don't want to deal with, even if I have a hot prospect after 1 year, he might want to go somewhere else. I don't want to deal with NIL. I mean, some guys are just not wired that way. I mean, I think that counterintuitively, some NFL guys looked at Mel Tucker and said, wait a second, why don't I go on the college track, use the transfer portal, use my evaluation skills, and get a $90 million contract 4 years from now? Why not try that? But there's some guys like Jim Harbaugh who just don't want to deal with this stuff. And I kind of think if he can get back to the NFL, and he should be the first choice for everybody. He can't be for Jacksonville because they're taking his arch enemy, Trent Baalke, as general manager. But if you have an opening right now, your first call should be to Jim Harbaugh. And at this point, I think he might be real tempted. Bruce Feldman would not throw that out for no reason.
Yeah. So I was told by somebody in the Baker Mayfield circle, Baker's come to terms with it ain't great. And he knows it's his future there is at best dicey. And he's smart enough to know it's obvious. I think a healthy Baker you could move. I don't know if a banged up one you can. And because I've been critical of him, a lot of people just they don't want to hear my opinion. They just think I don't like him. So I'm going to turn it over to you. What do you believe his future is?
I don't think long term it's in Cleveland, and I don't think so much of this was there's a number the Browns are comfortable with extending him. I just can't believe that would happen at this point. I don't think they would have any negotiations right now because they just don't know. It's interesting. People have been quoting the last couple of weeks. Andrew Berry said something to me before the season that has come up, which is that if you don't have the quarterback settled, you're stuck in neutral. That's his philosophy. Andrew Berry, the GM, came up under Bill Polian, which is the first question is, do we have a quarterback? And the second question is, how do we support the quarterback? And if you don't have the first question settled, you don't care about anything else. And that's a question Andrew Berry is asking himself right now. And I don't believe they have the evidence to commit to Baker long term. Mary Kay Cabot had a piece over the last 24 hours basically saying that Baker did not like the play calling this year. Baker, you're not going to get better. You're not going to get the Matthew Stafford treatment. You have not shown enough to where anybody else is going to say, let's stake a claim to our franchise to this guy. It's not going to happen. Stefanski's going to be as good as you can possibly get right now. You'd have to go a very different route to get a better offensive coach. There aren't many, by the way. Stefanski's very good. Listen, the injuries I understand, but right now, Baker Mayfield is not in the top 20 really in any meaningful statistical category over the second half of the season. On third down, there's some statistics where he's like 35th. He's not even one of the 32 best starters in the league. And so the numbers are ugly. I think if you're Cleveland and they take everything really in a really very analytical way, they're not all that analytics driven, but they're going to think about this. You got to bring in big competition at the very least, and you got to think about just moving on and trying something new next year.
So what is today the Bucs? It says are they going to release Antonio Brown? And I said this earlier. I don't know Antonio Brown, but the last 4 years he's been a bad person. I know Bruce Arians and people that know Bruce Arians, and for the last 4 years he's been a good person. And I said it's a little bit of a cautionary tale. You know, when you get these stars like Aaron Rodgers or LeBron or Tom Brady, they often want to stay in personnel. And, you know, LeBron wanted Westbrook. The Lakers didn't. Now they're stuck with him. Aaron wanted Randall Cobb. Good guy, hurt again, 28 catches. You want to appease the star. We all knew AB's bad for locker rooms. We knew that 4 years ago. He was comfort food for Tom. Tom wanted him. By the way, so is Gronk, but Gronk's great for locker rooms. So that's my takeaway on this is, you get the star, they want their guys, and I thought I think Joey and I did, this was dicey at best to start. Where do you land on it today?
Well, the risk reward worked because they won a Super Bowl. And I think that they would trade all the things they're going through now for that ring, and they got it. He scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl, and they needed all, that receiving core was nasty last year, and I think that was a big part of it. And so that the gamble worked. Now, I think the Bruce Arians, there's a locker room component to this, how he handled it. I'm sure players are watching that. We had James Jones on our podcast the other day, and he was basically saying that, I think that maybe players would maybe want him to be a little more honest and forthcoming about what actually happened and what actually happened on the sideline, maybe even publicly, and not just say, hey, he's no longer a Buck. You want that kind of communication. But I think that, at this point, you have to separate Antonio Brown needing help, which he does, and I hope he gets those resources and hope he gets people who love him, with the fact that the Bucs have a football problem right now, which is that a guy they really needed after the Chris Godwin injury quit on his team in the third quarter. And so I think that the Bucs have just an offensive problem right now. People I've talked to just really don't think they're an NFC contender right now. And this is the gamble you take when you bet on guys like Antonio Brown.
Yeah, good stuff. Kevin Clark, the Ringer, NFL writer, host of the Slow News Day videocast. He is in an undisclosed, beautiful location in Florida. Not going to get into specifics, but it's very classic old-ist town in Florida. So it's good seeing you, buddy.
Great seeing you, man. Happy New Year.
St. Augustine, by the way. I'm not telling you his address. It's just a beautiful place to be. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.